Hello arty peoples and welcome to another episode of Jerry's Live. My name is Emmy Klein and I am your host this evening. Now tonight I have a kind of information heavy show planned. Essentially we got a bunch of these LUKAS acrylic mediums in, and I think I counted them. There's like 27, and it gets a little confusing as to what they all do, what they all are for, and I can't go over 27 mediums in one show, so I actually broke this up into kind of a two-part series. Today we are going over all of the different types of gel mediums that they offer. Next week we'll be going over all of the paste mediums. So that will be kind of, all of those are in that show, and then these are going to be all the gels. So I kind of wanted to break it up a little bit so we can actually not just crazy run through all of them, and we can squish a couple of these around and show you really what they do. Because it's really hard to find which mediums are for you, especially when we're shopping online and you can't physically touch them or see how they dry or what they work with as far as like other acrylics. So that is what we're doing today in today's show. Now, if you are interested in testing out any of these mediums or using any of the materials that I'm using in today's show, make sure you go to the website, JerrysArtarama.com, and type in today's class code. It is JL397. So in the search bar at the top of the website, type in JL397, and the teacher's card will come up, and then you can check out all of the products there, and you can see which ones are going to be good for you. So we have a lot to cover. Let's jump straight into it. So first things first, I wanted to start with our painting mediums. So I have a gloss painting gel and a matte silk painting gel. And I wanted to show you the differences between them. So if we go to that overhead camera, this is probably going to be a lot easier to see. Let me excuse my reach, sorry. I have a lot of different swatches around me, so I'm going to be doing a lot of reaching today. So first and foremost, all of these gel mediums that I'm using today are going to come in these jars that are 250 milliliters each. And they all have the red stripes on them so that you know it's the LUKAS brand. And then the name of the medium is actually in 3 different languages right here. For English, you're going to be looking at the middle one. This is the gloss painting gel, and this is the matte silk painting gel. Now what these do, it's very similar to like a gloss gel medium, if you've ever seen anything like that in other brands. Now also, before anybody asks, because I have a feeling they're going to, if you are looking to use these with any other brand of acrylic, whether or not it's LUKAS or Golden or Liquitex, or all acrylic mediums will work with all acrylic paints. It's acrylic polymer. They're all interchangeable. It doesn't matter what brand you use. Now, I am going to be using the LUKAS Acryl Studio today, the acrylics that I have up here on the table. But if you have a different type of acrylic at home, that's okay. These will still work with them. So the gloss painting gel, I have our swatches here on panels, and I'm going to be pulling them all for all the different types. This right here is the gloss. As you can tell, obviously this one's glossy compared to that one. So I have a line on every panel that I just kind of scribbled out so that you can see the transparency of this medium. Now, with this section right here, this is just the medium by itself, and right here is the medium mixed in with the alizarin crimson LUKAS Acryl Studio acrylic paint. Now, also in case anybody is wondering about the ratios, I didn't specifically measure the ratio of paint to whatever medium I was using. I kind of measured with my heart. That's how we do. There's not a very specific ratio that I was using for all of these. I just blobbed in some acrylic. But I wanted to show you what they look like by themselves and when you mix it with this is, I believe, a semi-transparent color. Yes, a semi-transparent color. So it's not even fully transparent, but you can see that line all the way through. So it's a pretty transparent medium. Now, in comparison, this is the matte silk painting gel. Now this is a little bit more on the like yellow side when it's just by itself, and this is really thick up here. and then it gets thinner and thinner. And I wanted you, like, you can really see it with when I mix the acrylic in. It is really thick. I wanted to see how thick I could apply these mediums and kind of get away with it. There's a couple of them actually that I probably needed to pull back on the thickness of the application, and I'll show you when I get to those. But for these right here, I really didn't have a problem getting really thick on that application. And then over here, the two different kind of sides, this is as smooth as I could make it with a palette knife. And then this is me just kind of adding some texture with a palette knife, in case you're wondering. I did that for both of these so that I could see the texture with just the clear and then the texture with the paint mixed in. Now, to show you kind of what they feel like when they're actually wet, because acrylic polymer mediums in general tend to be kind of milky white. Oh, and if you're wondering, all of these jars come with kind of a sealed lid, which is what I'm struggling with because I more or less gel medium to close this. And that might happen consistently throughout the show. But as you can see, this is the matte silk painting gel, and it's pretty white, but it dries pretty clear. I wanted you to see that because when it comes to these mediums, all acrylic polymers, that's why acrylics have that shift in color sometimes when they're drying. They're all going to have that. I have Arctic or Mint. I'm gonna let you guys decide. Which one am I mixing in here? Arctic? Arctic. Okay, so I'm gonna mix some Arctic in with my gel medium here. Again, we're measuring with our heart, just a little blob. A little blob will do you. But what this does is that it extends your paint without changing the color. It does allow it to have a lot more transparency. So this is a semi-transparent color to begin with. Actually, this one's pretty, oddly enough, it's semi-transparent. I would say it's a pretty opaque color just because it has a titanium white in there. This one might be a little bit more opaque than the other, the acrylic alizarin crimson. But when you mix it in with medium, not only are you extending your paint, so I now have a lot more paint than I started with, but it's going to be a little bit more transparent, right? So when I take this, and yes, this is the matte silk. If I just lay this down, I can still have a good amount of opacity with that because it's a pretty opaque paint color to begin with. But if I really want to get some transparency, I can add more medium. And then of course, because this medium has that milky white off the bat, it's going to appear a little bit lighter, and then when it dries, it's going to have a little bit more transparency. Now, what's really fun is that, yes, you can extend your paint that way. You can gain transparency. These two specifically are also really great with collages. So if you're trying to find a medium for collaging, these two are wonderful. They also could potentially be used for like the image transferring. I think I've had an entire show on that before. But the main difference between the two of them is that this one's going to be glossy, this one's going to be matte. But it really does hold its peaks and valleys as far as like the texture is concerned. I got a good amount of texture on here. Now, if I'm looking for a lot of texture, this would probably not be the one that I'm going to use. I have another one to show you a little bit later on if you're looking for more texture than this. This one does kind of self-level a little bit compared to that, but I have another one for you if that's what you're looking for. Now, if you do have any questions about these mediums, feel free to pop them in the chats, of course. This is the gloss medium. I have my amazing moderators, Jillian and Amanda, in my chats today, and they can ask me your questions while we're live today. But I'm going to make sure I close my jars because we don't need our acrylic mediums drying in the jar. That's always sad. I'm going to mix the same color in here with my gloss. And of course, if you guys are also interested in seeing what these look like once they're fully dry, let me know in the chats. I can also make sure to get a really good photo or scan of these. I definitely have a lot more medium to paint on this blob. I can already see that it's more transparent. But if you guys do want to see what these look like once they're fully dry, I can also make sure to post them in the Jerry's Life Facebook group. You can see, yeah, that transparency really comes through when you have more medium in with your paints. So this becomes almost like a glaze, which is really fun. So that is the gloss, that is the matte silk painting gels. Now, what I also wanted to show you, and this is going to be kind of the same for everything, I'm going to take a little bit of the mint, and I'm going to take a brush, and I'm going to dry brush it on top of this textured surface, which is really fun. So not only can you tint it with an acrylic paint, you can also, if you want to fully cover on top, you can. Remember, this is not a fully opaque paint. This is a semi-transparent paint, or semi-opaque, I'm sorry. So it has a little bit of transparency, which is why I'm still seeing that line come through. But if you want to just kind of dry brush it on top of your texture, you can. Same thing over here. So this is a really fun way of getting texture and then being able to paint right on top of it, whether you want to go full coverage or just kind of hit the peaks and valleys of your texture, which is really fun. Even if I dry brush over here, you can really get quite a lot of texture with that. And this is the matte silk painting gel. The gloss is going to have a little bit more slickness to it, but you can still do the exact same thing and get a really fun texture coming through on your paintings. Let me actually get some good coverage over here. So you can get that texture coming through, even though I've painted completely over it. And there's no adhesion issues either, because acrylic really loves to stick to acrylic. So you got some really lovely. And if anybody's wondering, I am using a just a golden Taklon brush. This is the Bestie. It's technically a wash brush, but I like the 1 inch, or I'm sorry, this is a 3/4 inch size, especially when I'm doing really fun glazes like that. So that is our painting gels. Does anybody have any questions before I move on to the next version? Because we have so much to go over. And I'm going to actually just pop these over here. Push things out of the way. Now, for anybody who is, and I'm going to actually just try and save my palette paper here. I have a lot of palette space, so I might as well use it. For anybody who is wanting some more texture, I have similar type of thing, and I'll show you the last one in a minute. I have a gloss and a matte, and these are the Impasto structure gel. So it's a very similar to the painting gel, but these have the ability to hold a little bit more texture to them. Again, there's just the medium by itself, and there it is tinted with the alizarin crimson. And again, I have it really thin down here so that my texture is a lot thinner, and then it gets thicker and thicker as it goes up, which is really fun. And you can see the same thing over here. Now, with this one, yes, it is an Impasto gel, but it's one of those things that you can see that like sort of milky area right here and how it sort of changes color just in this little area here. This is where I got super, super thick, and by itself, I can tell you that I think that is a little too thick for this medium, because I'm pretty sure it's still a little wet on the underside of this. Now, it might dry more over time. It's one of those ones where like only time will tell. But if you're wanting something that's a little bit more clear, you might want to build up your layers with this, but you can still get a good thickness. Now, I'm I went a little crazy, but like you can see just how thick I got. But this is the one where, this one, I don't think I got nearly as thick as the gloss gel. But I would maybe pull it back just a little bit. And if you want more texture, add more on top later. You can always do that. Let me make sure my palette knife is clean. And then we're gonna squish around some paint for this. Now we're gonna do the gloss one first. Again, it comes with a little lid, which I just need to pop open because these are the ones I use to test. So again, it comes out like a milky white, but it dries much clearer. Push this down in there. I love how sealed that is because I really, really don't love when I get mediums and they dry in the jar. So having that is amazing. Put that over there. And then I'm mixing the Arctic in with it. Again, measuring with a heart. Just a little dab will do ya. And then we're gonna mix it right in. And usually when it comes to mixing, I make sure that I have just a consistency in the color, in my texture of my medium, because sometimes it's like this one's thicker, as you can tell, than the one I was just previously using, words. So this one, I feel like it takes just a second longer for me to really get a good mix. Yes, it is acrylic, and yes, they do dry quickly because it's acrylic. You're working with evaporation, but this isn't going to dry instantaneously. Like, I'm still working with it. It's fine. Now, within, say, 30 minutes, this whole pile might be really sticky and really hard to, like, functionally work with. But this one, you can see, it just wants to be thick. She is ready to be textured. And that's how I got that texture that's on this other side here, is if I take my palette knife and I just kind of dab it, it'll do that, which is really fun. But this is just a really lovely way of adding texture. You can very easily tint it, but again, we can also dry brush it, and I'll do that in a minute. Make sure I clean this off. And then I'm going to use the matte Silk Impasto Structure Gel. I also love that it's like a matte silk because it does feel almost kind of, it's definitely way more matte, but it's not like solid matte. There's mattifying agents in here, but it almost does feel a little silky. Like it's got a slight sheen to it. So just be aware of that. I got, again, this little lid. Get that out of the way. Usually I also just leave it in the cap. Really nice to be able to just pop that out of the way. And if I forget to put it on, it's already in the cap. So I don't need to clean that. All right. Push that down and close that so we don't dry. Yes.
That last one that you use, Carrie on Instagram was wondering if it's comparable to a Golden or Liquitex Heavy Gel Medium.
Honestly, I would have to literally compare them side by side because when it comes to like the heavy gels or other brands, some of them can be a little bit thicker than others. I just can't remember exactly because they have the gel medium and then they have the heavy gel medium. I want to say this is closer to the heavy gel medium off the top of my head. Because if I remember correctly, the heavy gel medium is quite thick like this. But it's been a minute since I've used those. So off the top of my head, I'm going to say tentatively yes. Closer to the heavy gel medium. But again, it's an acrylic gel medium. So this one just happens to really help you get impasto. So this is the Matte Silk Impasto Structure Gel. So it's going to have that mattifying agent in there. It's still wanting to be really thick. It's forbidden frosting right now. I really just want to make a fake cake with this. and I've done that before. But when you have a nice opaque color, again, you can get some transparency in there if you want it. Using more transparent colors, like I'm using a pretty opaque color. If you want transparency with that, you can definitely get that. Like you can see that with the alizarin crimson, where even with texture, it is slightly transparent. And you can see over here with, like, there's a good amount of texture on there. But this is the matte silk Impasto structure gel. So it's going to have a lot more of the mattifying agent kind of happening to it compared to the gloss. So this is gonna kind of have that glossy sheen. So this is gonna probably look almost like wet frosting once it's done, which is weird to think about, but there you go. And then, of course, we can also dry brush, which is really fun. Because again, these are acrylic polymers. They want to stick to other acrylic polymers. Let me get another paper towel here, dry my brush off so I can definitely get a nice dry brush technique. I have that same mint color. So this is the matte silk. I can get a good amount of coverage if I want to fully cover this and coat the whole thing, but I can still have a little bit of texture in there just for my palette knife, and then even dry brushing, which is so fun. And then I'll do the dry brushing over here. Not stick my finger in some paint, which is something I definitely do all the time. I'm a clean painter, but sometimes it gets you. But yeah, look at how fun that is. Like, it really does stick to the top of the paint so well. And you can build this up. You can shift it color by color. If you want more of that color happening, you can actually build it up that way and get more opacity. You can really build quite a lot of color contrast with this. It's really fun. So that is the matte silk. And then I have the gloss, which I'm running out of paint over here. Let me actually pour out a little bit more paint so that I'm not struggling with remnants. All right. I can get full coverage. And dry brushing, even in that little area where it's still not quite dry. And I would say that's probably 1/4 of an inch thick, in case anybody is wondering. 1/4 of an inch is a little too much for this. Like, if you want to build it up to that, you absolutely can. I would just go a little bit less than that. So, and then we have our texture over here, which is so much fun. And even though it's glossy, it's still sticking to that surface. Acrylic is just oddly sticky. Acrylic wants to stick to acrylic. That's why you never put your paintings face to face, because you will absolutely fuse them together. Ask me how I know. It's a really frustrating fact, but I've done that so many times. So that is the gloss, and there is the matte. And I honestly think that the paint itself has kind of a satin sheen. So what's really fun is that if this dries kind of like a satiny, I'll have the glossy kind of bits kind of shining through in between all of that, which is really fun. So that is the Impasto Structure Gel in matte and glossy. I'm gonna pop those. I'm running out of table space. I'm gonna actually just have to stick them right back where they used to be. And then, just to make sure we have our options covered, we have an Impasto Structure Gel that is transparent. Now, you might go, those are pretty transparent, but that transparency is a little bit more solid all the way through. Like, I can absolutely see this line without any issue, whereas with, before I dry brushed them, with the matte and the gloss, there was a little bit of haziness to it. It gives me perfect clarity all the way through. Now this one is actually really fun because I probably would use this for a technique that if you guys want to see me do kind of a paint along, let me know in the comments. Because I would use this to have like a graphite drawing or even an ink drawing. And then I would either seal it with like a spray varnish, not a spray varnish, but like workable fixative. Just to make sure that if it's graphite specifically, I would make my pencil kind of stick down to whatever surface I'm working on. And then I would texture on top of that drawing. And then I probably would stick with a little bit thinner like this so that when I paint on top, whether I give a tinted texture on top of it or I go clear, I can also lean into that texture for the painting techniques, which are really fun. So like if I want to do a plein air drawing of like a nice mountain or a beach or whatever it may be, and then I texturize the whole thing, I can then paint on top of that and then start really building my painting that way. But this is really nice because then it does kind of preserve the transparency just a little bit better. And again, I'm now got it on my hands. It does, again, come out milky white. And I got it on my other hand. It's fine. Happens. This is why we're wearing aprons, guys. Yes. And then just a little blob of the Arctic. This one is a little bit thinner, I will say, than the other two. It's still quite impasto. So again, that little blob of paint now turned into a massive mound of paint. So even if you wanted to just straight paint with this, you can. This will preserve your brush strokes if that's something that you're also looking for. Because when these dry, specifically the impasto ones are really good at when they dry, they don't contract down too much and you don't lose a lot of your texture. Because sometimes a lot of like the self-leveling paints or the mediums, when they are pretty leveling, when they dry, they contract down, so they kind of even take away a little bit more texture, where this one really will hold quite a lot of it without having much contraction as it dries. So like you can see, I've gotten quite a lot off the board. It's pretty textured. Then, of course, we can also wipe off my palette knife before it dries. It's going to help me keep going with the show. Then we can also dry brush this, which is really fun. So, actually, let's do full coverage over here. So in case I wanted full coverage, you absolutely have no problem with that. And then dry brushing. So like if I had a drawing underneath and I just wanted to start tinting it with like maybe a transparent acrylic, I really like to go with like a burnt sienna or even like a magenta. There's a fluorescent magenta on my table right here. I absolutely would do that and then start building up my layers on top of that by kind of dry brushing in some areas and then being a little bit more opaque in others and kind of playing with that transparency, which is really fun. But yeah, if you guys do want to see that technique as a little paint along, let me know. I don't know if you guys have gotten those in the comments yet. But look at how fun that is. I'll hold it up so you guys can really see. All that texture coming through. Very fun. All right, so I'm going to put this off to the side and shift some things around here. Again, I'm running out of table space. There are so many mediums. Again, it's so hard to figure out which ones you need. I'm going to get a new little scrap of palette. And then we're going to move on to, the rest of them are, I'm pretty sure, all structure gel with different mix-ins. Now, structure gel is very similar to like the Impasto gel where it wants to be thick and it wants to have that structure. When it dries, it doesn't contract down as much. But when you have mix-ins, that's where it gets really interesting. So let's start with, let's start here. This is a crystal. I can talk, I can say words. Crystal Fragments Structure Gel. This is really struggling. So many words. This one is a little bit hard to describe in words because this one has coarse synthetic resin particles in it. So it's also a little bit more on the matte. You can see the sheen is a little bit more matte than like a glossy. I would say it's a little bit more like satin, but the feel of it is, the only way I could describe it, because I was showing Michaela earlier, was similar to like those paper things that you put on your tablets to where it feels like you're writing on paper. It's just soft, but like it has a little bit of grit to it. I don't know how else to describe that. It's really satisfying to like touch though. It's a good hand feel. I don't know. But let's open this up. And yes, this one's not crystal clear. As you can see, it kind of has almost like a gray sort of coloring to it when it's dry. So that's just something to be aware of. If this is something that you aren't going to want, if you want to use this just straight out of the jar, this is what the color that you're going to get, which is oddly like a gray brown. It's very beige, very Katie. It's her grayish era. Now, as you can see, this is a lot soupier than any of the other ones, but it's still, of all of them, I think this one's the one that's the most self-leveling, other than maybe the holographic one, which I'll show you in a minute. And yes, I said holographic. We're going to have some glitter on here. Now, this one, again, though, it doesn't contract much when it dries. It just happens to be thinner. So we're going to have a little blob of the Arctic. Running out of my paint. How? Clearly I use this color a lot. I love it. But this one will kind of make my, I don't know if you can hear that. It's a little gritty, which is why it has that feel to it. Again, it does increase the transparency of your color, but it does extend it. But this one's going to give you a lot more of a fluid kind of feel, but it still doesn't contract down when it dries. I don't know how else to explain that. It feels a little bit like an oxymoron, but it does have a slight transparency. I don't know if you can see that line coming through, but that's pretty thick. So if I wanted to kind of thin it down, I can absolutely do that. But this is actually one that is pretty fun as far as like the dry brushing as well. I really enjoy the feel of painting on that surface. It's really, really nice. All right, now let me get my brush dry over here so that I can dry brush some. All right. Now, I do have a couple other colors that I need to start playing with over here too, just to kind of show ya. Now, with this one, I can get pretty good coverage. It feels really nice to paint on. And then I can even do some dry brushing as well. And then I'll show you how it looks. This one does have, in the thinner areas, that texture of the canvas is still actually coming through, which is kind of cool. Again, when it has that like fluidity to it, it kind of falls into the nooks and crannies. But you can get some really lovely textures with this. That was a little bit more paint than I wanted. And if you ever wanted to play with like rags or a little bit of like a paper towel, you can very easily wipe it right back off if you can get to it fast enough. So this is really, really fun way of playing with your acrylics as well. there's a little bit of haze because it did fall into the nooks and crannies of that. So it's really subtly in there, which is so fun because it's got that like slightly grainy texture. So yeah, there is the Crystal Fragments Structure Gel. I can say words. Next, let's go with, this one's really fun. This is the Glass Bead Structure Gel. So again, we're gonna have that structure gel, which is going to try and hold its form. I believe this one's a little bit thicker than this. Let's open up the jar, flip this around so that we can see what it does. Also, these are the jars that I was using to like swatch these with, and I clearly did not clean up the jars as well as I thought I had. So I have some like dry bits on the edges of the jar. Now this one is so fun. They have tiny microscopic glass beads in them. I'm gonna actually hold this way up so you can really see. So when you tint it, the glass beads still appear pretty clear, but you can see when you start building up that texture, it starts building up the color because it's just surrounding the glass beads. But if you get really thin with it, it almost looks like little bubbles, which is so fun. But this is a really fun medium. I enjoy this one a lot. So this one's going to sound crunchy. Again, it does come out of the jar milky white. And then it dries much clearer, obviously. And I swear it feels like I always get little glass beads all over my hands when I'm playing with this stuff. This one, I'm gonna go with a fluorescent. We need to go with some fun colors here. I do enjoy the Arctic, but y'all know I love me a fluorescent pink. Clearly I use this paint a lot. There we go. Again, we're measuring with our heart. Not sure how much that is. It's just a good amount, you know. Mixes in so easily. And yeah, it's a little bit thicker than the other medium that we were just playing with. But it's going to have not the same like thickness as the Impasto gel. But this one, kind of scrape it off there. It does go on kind of crunchy. It can have a good amount of opacity. I can still see, hopefully you guys can see that, the line kind of coming through. It's, this fluorescent magenta is really, really quite bright on the camera. I don't know if it's picking it up, but it can still hold a good amount of structure too. So like, the texture that I'm getting is pretty fun. So you can actually get quite a lot there. Now with these, it's really fun to work with fluid acrylics. Now what's really fun also is that most of these mediums, if you have a collection of acrylic inks, this is what I would consider essentially a super fluid acrylic paint because it's still the acrylic polymer. That's kind of how it functions. Now, it is fluid like water. If you wanted to have just a collection of paint as well, if you get the gel painting medium and just have these already on hand, now you have a full set of acrylic paints because you add just a little bit of your ink to your medium and now you have paint. And it still works so well. But this is really fun because it has a little dropper in it. And you can also kind of have it go around the beads. And you're going to start seeing it kind of spread. Let me get my brush cleaned off here and brush it around so you guys can really see. And this pushes it kind of around all the glass beads, which is so fun. You can also have that happen with the areas that have texture. So like anywhere where there's a little bit of a valley, it's going to go darker. And then anywhere where there's a peak, it'll go lighter because it's higher. And so that fluid acrylic just wants to run around and have gravity kind of help it. So it really gives a really fun texture to your piece, which is so fun. Now, I would love to hear what you guys would use these for. Please tell me in the comments below, like what you would paint with these. Because I feel like this would be such a fun abstract medium to work with, but like you could very easily paint sea life with this. Again, you can also very easily use the tinted ground and go that way. And this is acrylic, so you can also still, since this is acrylic and it's just very fluid, I can also still take my acrylic mint color that's a little bit thicker and still work right on top of it. They all work so seamlessly together. And you can really get quite a lot of texture with this. Now that fluid acrylic is still wet, so it's starting to pick up with my brush, but that's okay. Look how fun. This just feels like bubbles. It feels like it needs to be used in an aquatic. Although, I don't know, if you're painting like a bug, this might be a really fun way of having texture for the bug. I don't know. There's so many options. Too many things to paint. Now, again, if you wanted full coverage, you could. You are going to have to kind of work it into that structure, but you can very easily get opaque coverage as well. But there you go. You can get a lot of texture with this, which is just super fun. And again, you can build it up. So yeah, that is the glass bead. Where did the jar go? Glass bead structure gel. Any questions on these? Again, let me know in the comments. I'm gonna put that over here, not on top of the wet panel. All right, let me clean off my painting knife again. Sorry, there's a lot of cleaning off my paint palette knife here. A lot of mediums to go over. We're gonna just flip this around again. And then we have a fiber structure gel. Sorry again for the reach. This one's a little bit different in the same sense of like there's weird things mixed in. I don't know if you guys can really see that, but there are like little chunks all throughout this one because this has flexible fibers mixed into them. So it's just a really bizarre, fun texture to work with. Now this one I actually have not dry brushed before, so we're going to experience that together. But this one's a little bit more fluid in the sense of like the medium, but again, it doesn't contract when it dries. And this one is a little strange because it has those flexible fibers mixed in. So as I work with it, it gets a little, it feels kind of weird. I'm going to actually go with the dark green on this one. Just because I want to see a darker color with this. So just a couple of drops, and I'm going to mix that right in. Let me close this before I spill ink all over myself. Again, that is an acrylic ink, so it's technically a very, very fluid acrylic. Now, again, this one is milky, so it's going to appear a lot milkier, like a pastel color, before it dries. But I'm curious as to how dark this is going to get because it's going to go transparent. But as you can see, it moves like there's just something in it, which is, it's the flexible fibers, which is bizarre. I don't know how else to say that. It's just a weird, it's a fun medium, but it's just bizarre. So I'm going to actually leave it, let's leave it quite thick up here because I want to see what that does. when it dries. But if you get a little bit thinner, you can start to see those fibers come out. Like right there, there's a big chunk of fiber. It's really weird how it moves and works, but it's such a fun texture. Again, if I want to get some texture with this, it will still hold some peaks and valleys as well, just like I can show you with the dried area here. It actually got quite thick on some areas. And then of course that will come out with dry brushing as well. All right. So we're gonna use the same mint color and we're gonna dry brush this. Now I'm gonna give you a full coverage over here. Oh, that's fun. Oh, that's oddly fun texture with like the thinner area, like the more level area that I got. You can actually see the different fibers, which is wild. And then we're gonna go with some dry brushing as well. I don't know, I might use this for my my texture technique where I have just a thin layer on top. That was a lot more than I wanted. If you ever put too much acrylic down than you intended, you can catch it really, really quickly. But again, it is acrylic and it is pretty opaque. So like if I wanted to fully remove it, I can. I would probably just run it underwater because this panel would be able to take that. But with the dry brushing technique, I can just wipe it down and get back to dry brushing. But wiping it down is going to push the paint into those like nooks and crannies a little bit more. So you can get quite a lot of texture with this. Very bizarre, but fun. Yes, we have a question?
Yes, someone on YouTube was wondering if you would want to use an isolation coat either underneath or on top of your texture.
That depends. It's a really great question. So thank you guys for asking that. Isolation coats are really great if you want to preserve a layer. Considering I usually use this in the entire process of making my piece, no, I wouldn't get an isolation coat. Also, considering this is like an acrylic medium, odds are you're not getting this back up off of your piece. Now, when it comes to like the technique that I was talking about, where I have like a drawing and I've just either used ink or graphite or whatever it may be, that I would have an isolation coat on just to make sure that my ink isn't reactivated. I would probably use like an acrylic ink if I were to do a drawing with that, just so I know it's permanent, and then I wouldn't need to put on an isolation coat. Graphite, because it just wants to move, same thing with like if you use charcoal. It just wants to move when you get it wet or when you put acrylics on top. Like, have you ever done a graphite drawing and then go to tone the whole thing with like a fluid acrylic and you can see your drawing kind of smear a little bit? That's because the graphite just wants to move. That's why I would have an isolation coat, because I want my drawing to be stuck down and I want that to be protected and not move around as much as possible. That's the only time I would really say that you might want one, is if you do want to preserve that layer. Now, again, it always depends on how you use these. It's just that acrylic wants to fuse to acrylic. So if you put down an acrylic painting medium on top of an acrylic painting, you're not ever really going to be able to pick that back up. It's fused. Again, how many times I have ruined a painting because I accidentally put it face to face with another acrylic painting, and now they're just together forever. They have joined lives. So, but that is the what was it called? The fiber structure gel, with the fibers added into it, and then I have 5 more to go over, and the last 2 are sparkly. So hold with me here. This is a crystal gel. So this one is absolutely crystal clear as far as the transparency as well. This one does not hold the impasto texture like the transparent impasto gel. That's the main difference between them. But this one is still crystal clear. Like, as you can see, there is zero problem with seeing that line through it. So again, if I did a drawing and I wanted to put texture on this without having a ton of texture, this one would be really, really great to use. It does tint so easily. We're going to do that as well. I should have cleaned my palette because now, my palette knife, because now acrylics dry relatively quickly. It always depends on your studio. If you guys are wondering about dry time, they dry just like normal acrylics. It does have that dependency on how thick you're applying it, how the conditions of your studio, like temperature, humidity. If it's something that you need it to dry fast, it's apply it thinner and then build up your textures that way if you wanted to. But this one is quite lovely. Again, it has that little lid on there. I stuck it down and now I have it on my hands every time. But this one again has the milky whites. It is a little bit on the thicker side as well. Not as thick as that impasto, transparent impasto gel. But let me get some, I'll mix the Arctic in with this one. Just a little blob will do ya. And it's going to extend my paint. It's going to increase the transparency. Again, because it's a little bit on the thicker side. And this is where it's like, you really want to see just how thick that paint or that medium is. It's so hard to shop for these online when you can't physically squish them around. So I hope I'm helping you guys understand what these mediums are and kind of how they function. So again, this is a pretty opaque color. So this one's a semi-opaque, semi-transparent. This is a semi-opaque. So this is going to have a little bit more opacity. So I am kind of wiping away that line just by building up that, that texture. But this really does hold quite a lot of texture as well. And I can build it up that way. And again, even with the thick areas, I had zero problems with it drying whatsoever. But let's do a little dry brushing because you can also paint right back on top of it, no matter what you're using, whether it's opaque, transparent, fluid, impasto paints, whatever it is. You got options here. So let's get full coverage here. Again, it's not a fully opaque paint, but it has no problem with adhesion on that surface. And if I get a little bit less on my brush, I can dry brush it and build up my textures that way, which is really, really fun. Just kind of rub it on there. And then I can always build up the layers again. Then we're going to get a little bit thicker over here. Why not? We're gonna just, if anybody's wondering what I'm doing, I'm trying to hold my brush almost parallel to the surface of the panel. So essentially I'm just dragging it down the surface and just catching all of that texture to give me essentially wherever that blob of paint that's on my brush is catching is where it's kind of deposited. And I had a lot of paint on my brush right there, but you can see how it's just kind of bringing out the texture a little bit. And the more you add, the more intense that kind of happens. And then you could even very easily fill that in with like fluid acrylics, which is really fun. You have a question?
Yes, we have a follow-up question
Yeah.
from the previous one. Would you add an isolation coat to protect your textured layers from a final varnish coat?
It depends on what type of varnish you use. So again, it's like if I varnish my acrylic paintings with an acrylic varnish, again, acrylic is now fusing to acrylic. You're really not going to be able to get that off. The idea of a varnish layer is, and having the isolation coat is to really kind of give you a barrier between your painting and the varnish to where you can remove it. If that's something, like if it has like damage and something like that, like if it's in a fire and you need to re-varnish it and clean it, that's one of those things that's why an isolation coat is great. With acrylics, this is where it gets a little like gray area, because acrylics are a lot easier to clean than like oil paints, whereas like with the oil paints you have to remove the varnish fully and then be able to re-varnish. With acrylic paints, you're really never going to be able to get that varnish layer off. Now if you have a varnish layer that is more like solvent based, yes, I would probably put an isolation coat there, because I just, on the off chance that it's going to have some weird interaction with my paint, I want to be able to maybe have a little bit of a barrier in case I very quickly need to get it off of my painting. If you ever see that something's reacting to your painting in a bad way, get it off of there as quickly as possible. But that's one of those things where that is a little bit of a gray area. I probably wouldn't put an isolation coat on my acrylic paintings before I varnish them. I just varnish straight onto it because I'm using an acrylic varnish with an acrylic painting. It's going to fuse together and just kind of create a barrier between my painting and the world, and then I'm never going to remove that varnish essentially. But with acrylics, they're so easy to clean that it does become almost like you can just take like a cleaner to your painting to clean. Don't do that, but it's like if you have like a soapy water, you could easily clean your paintings with that. If you have like smoke damage, that kind of thing. It's one of those things where I would always talk to a conservator technically first. They are really well versed in that kind of a situation, but for this purpose, I would just varnish straight on top, personally. But yeah, that is the crystal gel. This is a super fun one though. I hope you guys enjoyed that. And then I have some sand. We're gonna actually just flip this all the way around and clean off my palette knife before I pull this out. So anybody ever want to do a painting of a beach, this is gonna be the one for you. These are really fun. Even if you do like the sand kind of going into like the resin, I know those are really popular and they're really pretty, and this is gonna be the one for you. Now I say one, there are two. So I'm just gonna pull them both over here at the same time, because I also have the last two that are also gonna happen at the same time. This is quartz sand structure gel, and then this is the crystal sand structure gel. They both are sand mix-ins, so they're both gonna have that gritty, it is sand essentially mixed into the structure gel. Now the main difference between them, and this is something I'm gonna have to let me put them together like that so you can really see. Crystal is going to be more transparent, so when it's mixed in, it almost disappears as far as like the color of the actual sand. It just picks up whatever acrylic paint that you've put with it. The quartz, you can still see the like little sand bits in comparison to like this one just turned alizarin crimson. This one is like alizarin crimson with like sand mixed in. So I can still see the little sand particles, but the crystal sand structure gel is almost like transparent sand mixed in. So it just almost disappears, but it leaves you with that texture. Both of them are lovely. And as you can see, by themselves, they both look like sand. So if you ever wanted to build a sand painting, this is the fun thing for you to get. Depending on what you're looking to do, if you have a very specific sand color in mind, this one might be the way to go. Again, it is very thick, and it is very sandy and gritty. So it's going to hold texture really well. I think that's just the nature of having, and this one I'm gonna actually mix the green in, why not? This is the nature of having sand kind of texture is that it just makes it super thick. And I just made green sand. How fun is that? Now, it is still going to dry kind of on the transparent side, even though it has that like sort of milkiness to it. Again, that's the acrylic polymer that's still activated and wet. But as soon as it dries, you're going to get a little bit more transparency, which is what you can see. You can sort of see the line through these. But the sand is really going to kind of start blocking whatever is underneath. And I want to say, Michaela, what was that one, the combination that you were looking at, that you were like, this could be the sand and this could be the water? I can't remember.
It was the one that was glossy but very self-leveling.
That's right. Glossy and self-leveling. I want to say, is that the crystal, like the crystal? If you put these two together, you could have water and sand. And this is kind of on the shiny side too. So it's very glossy and looks wet. And then this one is very matte and looks like sand because it is sand. And I made green sand. But it definitely wants to hold structure and as much texture as you put into it as possible. Like that is a lot of texture and it's going to stay put. Absolutely stay put. So that is the crystal sand structure gel. I'm going to keep that up here. And then clean this off and mix in the quartz real quick. Oh, I must have forgotten the little lid. But it's still, these jars are still really lovely as far as the seal. I just am missing that lid now. I don't know where I put it. All right, this one, as you can see, it's also still pretty thick. It's not as thick as that. I want to say it's not as dense, but she's still quite thick. So, mix in more green sand. We're going to just say this is a beach on some faraway planet, because why not? Takes a second just to mix it in. Very easy to incorporate. If you have a thicker paint, it would still do the exact same thing. It just might take you a second to really mix it in because you're kind of having to work with the thickness of the paint that you're working with, because that's fluid. It just mixes in so fast. All right, and then this will also hold any and all structure that you put in there. And then we are going to dry brush these real quick. And again, if you guys do have any questions though, as far as these mediums are concerned, even if you are watching in the future and you have missed us while we are live, because I am getting to the last 2 mediums. If you have questions, now is the time. But if you are watching this in the future and we are already no longer live, still put your questions in the comments, because I will always go back and double check comments. Now this one you can get full coverage, but you really have to work it in. This is why I love a golden Taklon brush for anything that has a lot of texture, because these are like the workhorses of my studio. I can beat them up and they will still snap back into place. But if you want to dry brush, you absolutely can. It's a little bit on the lighter side, as far as like you can see the color just hitting the top of all of that sand. Just giving you some lovely sand colors. So like if you had, you know, the color that you wanted of the sand and you wanted to have like maybe a shadow come across because there's like maybe an umbrella in your image or something, you very easily could just tint and dry brush that with like a little bit of a shadow color. So easy to paint on top, and that is going to be absolutely fused forever because acrylic sticks to acrylic. And then that's the quartz. This is the crystal. Again, full coverage. You very easily get that. And then dry brushing. Now I am again running out of color paint over here, but I'm gonna actually just use this Arctic. Oh wait, no, that's mixed with a medium. Never mind. I have to clean my brush real fast. I forgot that I mixed that with a structure gel. The crystal gel. Let me pour more paint. Again, I use these colors so many times. I love them. They're so lovely. It's such a pretty color. All right, so now we do some dry brushing. Now that I have paint. Again, I'm just kind of dragging my brush across the top of this just to kind of catch just the peaks and valleys of that texture. The more paint I have on my brush, the thicker it's going to be, and the more opaque as well, if you're working with an opaque color. But there is the crystal sand structure gel, as well as the quartz sand structure gel. Which is, how would you know the difference between those if I didn't show you, right? All right, and the last two are sparkly, because we love our sparkles, so I figured we'd end the show on sparkles. So let's go with glitter, which is the holographic structure gel. And yes, there is holographic glitter in that. I will show you in just a second. And then we have the mother of pearl structure gel. As you can tell, it's very mother of pearl. So let me show you this. It's so pretty. That shine on this is just ridiculous. And you can see, bless you, with the texture, just the different levels of shine coming through, even just by itself is so pretty. I could look at this all day long. And you can still see a little bit of that line coming through. So it is still slightly transparent, and it's gonna be kind of on the glossier side. Now this holographic structure gel, I need it to focus because it is literally holographic glitter. It's so pretty. Everyone, ooh and ah. Again, you can still see that line through it. I got thicker up here, but this one does like to self-level a lot more than say this one. As you can see, I got a lot of texture with this, but I feel like this needs texture more than this does. This needs a little bit more of a self-leveled kind of surface. I feel like the flatter it got, the more I liked it, because I honestly like just a little sprinkling of a holographic glitter. Oh, even with the tint, so pretty. So this is one that I probably wouldn't dry brush technically, unless I have an like super transparent color. Let me rip this off real fast. So I need a clean palette. So I'm gonna go with the most transparent one that I have, and that's that dark green Fluid FW ink. Again, it's very soupy compared to some of the others, but it's gonna have that milky white aspect to it. But as you can see, it dries crystal clear with the addition of glitter. So if you mix in an opaque color with this, you're going to absolutely destroy all of the glitter aspect, because the opacity of that color is going to now surround the glitter, and it's going to cover it up essentially. And so that's why with this one, like the holographic glitter, you really need to use a transparent color. So I'm going to use just a little bit of the green. Actually, I'm going to use a lot of the green. I want a deeper green color. And it's going to still go a little bit more pastel because of that milky white acrylic polymer in there, but when it dries, it's going to go crystal clear, so it's going to be a nice dark green holographic glitter. And the green is still going to coat the glitter, so it's going to have the holographic kind of quality with a green tinge to it, which is kind of fun. Again, very easy to mix in. And if I take this, I very much enjoy it being nice and thin. It's a little gritty because of that glitter, which is okay. But if I got nice and thick, it's going to self-level So it won't really hold a whole lot of texture at all. But that blob of medium is going to stay there, and it won't contract down much. So I'm going to leave that, and let's see what that does. So I'm very excited about that. And again, I will absolutely post images of these in our Facebook, Jerry's Live Facebook group. So if you are interested in seeing all of these fully dry with all the different mix-ins that I did during the show, please feel free to join. It is free to join. You just need to answer that one security question. Oh my gosh, I have another palette knife up here. Let's do that. Because I know we are out of time already. This one is the Mother of Pearl, and it is a little bit thicker, as you can see. That's why it gets it to hold its kind of texture. And I will let you guys decide what is the color I'm going to mix in with the Mother of Pearl. Arctic. We're going to go Arctic, Mother of Pearl. Again, I'm going to go just a little bit. That was very ghost-like. This is Michaelia being a ghost over here. Now, this one is going to probably, because it does, again, have that milky white quality to it. And then when it dries, it goes clear, but it has that Mother of Pearl aspect to it that's mixed in. So it's going to go kind of shiny once it dries. But I'm curious as to how this one's going to work, because it has a titanium white in it, which is pretty opaque. So I honestly have not used a pretty opaque color with this Mother of Pearl. So we're going to find out what this one really looks like once it's dry. So I'm going to just add some fun texture here, because I feel like it looks so much better when it has texture. We're just going to tap it, give it some, it's going to be like a wave. It's going to be my water. There we go. We made Mother of Pearl Arctic. So we're going to see how that dries. And I feel like once it dries, it's definitely going to get quite shiny like this. It's just so pretty. I think that's probably my favorite of all of them. Not going to lie. And if this Arctic dries the way that I really want it to, it's going to be so beautiful. But again, what's really great is that you could very easily paint right on top of this, just like I did with all the others. I'm going to actually not do that for these, because I feel like that just ruins the glitter and the Mother of Pearl. And you guys have seen me paint that, and we are officially out of time. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this show. I know it was a lot of information, a lot of going through all the different mediums and what they could do. Again, if you guys are interested in having me use one or a couple of these for a paint along in another show, I can actually do a full project with one of them. Let me know. Also, let me know which one you want me to use, because there are so many mediums. So many that, again, next week I have all of the paste mediums. So we're going to be going over all the pastes just like we did today, so that way you guys understand what we have to offer and know which ones you guys really need to get, because it's so hard to shop online when you can't squish the paint around, right? And that's what we're here for. So I hope you guys enjoyed the show. That was our Jerry's Live on LUKAS Acrylic mediums, specifically the gel mediums. And again, if you are interested in any of the mediums that I went over during today's show, go to the website, JerrysArtarama.com, and type in today's class code, which is down here on the screen. It's JL397. If you type that in the search bar, Teacher's Cart will come up, and you will see everything that I've used today, and then you can check out there. And that was everything. I will see you guys next week for pastes. So, bye!